This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Kicking off today's show is Allison Womack, Agricultural Program Specialist at the Kansas FSA, as she discusses CRP programs in county committee elections. We are also joined by K-State's Ron Wilson as he shares how a scale company began in rural Kansas. Jason Warner, K-State Cow-Calf Extension Specialist, continues the show by reminding cattle producers what they need to consider if they are thinking about early weaning. The Beef Cattle Institute's Brad White, Phillip Lancaster, and Bob Larson close out today's show with a series of rapid-fire questions regarding cow mineral consumption, fly control strategies, and grazing cool season grasses. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Wednesday show hearing from the Agricultural Program Specialist at FSA, Allison Womack. Allison, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Allison, wanting to touch on a few things when it comes to the Conservation Reserve Program, and first off, wanting to talk about the CRP sign-up that has closed.
Correct. We've ended sign-up for general, continuous, and grassland CRPs. We've gotten results back for continuous. Most batches, I think we're still pending one. General CRP's done with acceptance versus non-acceptance, and we're waiting to hear on grassland offers on what has been accepted. So county offices should be reaching out to producers at this point to be completing their conservation plans, any other documentation that they need to get those contracts started October 1, 2024.
If they haven't heard anything, maybe reach out to their county office or wait a little bit to maybe hear from them.
It doesn't hurt. Give them a call. See where they're at in the process. I'm sure there's always a form you can sign.
And also on the CRP, talking about hay or graze CRP.
Correct. So if your county is an LFP designated county, which is livestock forage program, if you've been in a drought designation D2 status or higher for 8 weeks or greater, and you're LFP eligible, you are considered an emergency hay graze county. So you have the ability to hay or graze your CRP acreages without a penalty to your annual rental payment. If your county is not in one of those drought disaster statuses, you can still hay or graze depending on your practice. You can hay or graze up to 75% of the acreage every 3 years. And that will require a reduction in that annual rental payment. So you can either pay that reduction up front or you can take it out of your annual rental payment that comes out in October. Just reach out to your county office. They'll want to make sure that we need to update documents. You'll have to get a new conservation plan. Everything needs to be signed off before you get in that field.
And so for people who have made that distinction of being in the D2 drought for 8 weeks or longer, do they need to fill out paperwork before they start haying or grazing it?
Yeah. Always, before you do anything with your CRP, I would encourage you to reach out to the county office so we can get any documentation needed.
And what about for maintenance for CRP?
So for maintenance, you just want to ensure that you're controlling your noxious weeds, woody encroachments, no pass out on that grass acreages. It's your responsibility to maintain your CRP and ensure that you have a good stand out there.
As we are around County 4-H Fair time, we want to take the time to remind our livestock project participants about the youth loan programs from the Farm Service Agency.
Right. So youth loans are available. They're available to youths age 10 to 20 for up to $5,000. To apply, the applicant must submit a completed application to your local farm loan office, which may not necessarily be your local county office. So I would reach out to your county office first. They'll send you to the local office that services farm loans for your area. These loans can be used to buy livestock, rent or repair equipment, or pay any operating expenses for a project. You know, I believe you need a project advisor on that in order to qualify, so make sure you're speaking with somebody there.
For youth that are interested in the youth loan program, the parents don't have to be participating with the Farm Service Agency. This can be their own project?
I believe so, but the parent is going to have to sign off.
And something else that's coming up with the Farm Service Agency, county committee elections.
Yeah, county committee elections. So nominations are due August 1st of this year. So you're going to have to fill out a form FSA 669A. You can nominate yourself or somebody else in your local LAA. Reach out to your county office. Make sure that, one, you live in that actual LAA and you're a participating Farm Service Agency producer. Once elected, producers will serve for 3-year terms. They help control and administer our farm programs at a local level.
What is the commitment like for someone who is thinking about maybe they want to serve on the county committee?
That's a great question. So typically you're going to meet once a month, and you're going to go over program problems in your county office, make decisions on behalf of the county.
And a deadline that has come and gone, but wanting to make a mention of what maybe you've done if you've missed it, the acreage reporting deadline.
Right. Acreage reporting was completed July 15th of this year. You have till July 15th of 2025 to ensure that all your acreages are certified to reach certain program provisions. You're going to be required to complete a measurement service on any late filed farms, so that's going to be a $46 fee per farm and some paperwork on your behalf.
And Allison, something that's really important to you and you're dedicated to reminding farmers about, record keeping.
Yes, I will bring this up every time I come here. Make sure that your records are updated. Make sure if you're an LLC, we have the correct members and shares on file. You have the correct owner on your land, shares on your crops. That's all important because it's going to tie to payments later on.
And always wanting to remind people, where can they find out more information?
Farmers.gov or reach out to your local county office.
Allison, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give us an update on things happening at the Farm Service Agency.
Yeah, of course.
That was Agricultural Program Specialist with the Kansas Farm Service Agency, Allison Womack. As always, you can find out more information about programs from the Farm Service Agency by going to Farmers.gov. If you're wanting to find out more information specifically about loans, you can go to Farmers.gov/loans. I will link these in today's show notes on agtoday.net. Before we cut to a break, we're now going to be joined by Ron Wilson, who is the director of the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development at Kansas State University, as he shares how a mechanic named Ron Travis serviced industrial scale trucks. In 1997, he founded his own business that is now certified to install, calibrate, and service industrial weighing and measuring devices in 7 states. He explains how the company uses the latest technology backed by the best quality manufacturers in the world to serve the food processing, chemical, metals, automotive, trucking, and transportation, and plastics and manufacturing industries.
This is Kansas Profile. I'm Ron Wilson, director of the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development at Kansas State University. The big truck pulls onto the scale as it prepares to make a delivery in Texas. It is essential that the weight be accurate when delivering these products. That scale was installed and calibrated by a company in rural Kansas. Today we'll meet this company, which specializes in installing, calibrating, and servicing industrial scales used by all types of businesses to get the weight just right. You want to learn this full story. It's worth the wait. This is today's Kansas Profile. Ron Travis is the owner and founder of Travis Scale Company. He grew up at Arlington, Kansas, and joined the Marines. After his military service, he became a mechanic for various businesses. One of his jobs became servicing of scale trucks. He took a training program at community college and was recruited to come to western Kansas to work in the scale industry. In July 1997, Travis went into business on his own, and he founded the Travis Scale Company. Today, Ron and his wife Cindy lead the company, which is certified to work in Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, Missouri, Nebraska, and New Mexico. Travis Scale Company operates several service trucks and a full-time construction crew. Technicians and a specialized engineer work to calibrate the equipment. Cindy's son, Tyson McGuire, and his wife, Danielle, joined the business as well. They now work from Danielle's hometown, which is the rural community of Delphus, population 302 people. Now that's rural. We sell, install, and service industrial scales, Travis said. The company specializes in precision balances, industrial scales, and calibration weights. We use the latest technology backed by the best quality manufacturers in the world, Travis said. Travis Scale serves the food processing, chemical, metals, automotive, trucking, and transportation, plastics, and manufacturing industries. I never knew there were so many types of scales. Travis Scale can work on everything from airline baggage to wheel load scales. There are axle scales, bench scales, counting scales, crane scales, floor scales, lift truck scales, pallet jack scales, portion control scales, retail scales, stainless steel scales, washdown scales, and more. The company also offers check weighers, dimensioning systems, force measurements test stands, in-motion weighing devices, moisture analyzers, and other types of equipment. In addition to routine calibration and repair and maintenance work, the company offers short-term or even one-time scale rentals as well. In southwest Kansas, customers are often grain elevators, feed yards, and railroad stations. For the livestock industry, Travis Scale began building its own prefabricated scale decks and cattle racks in 2002. Instead of using the recommended 3,500 force concrete, they pour 10,000 force concrete. This works to ensure longevity and durability even in the most stressful conditions, Travis said. Quality and integrity are hallmarks for the Travis Scale Company. For example, moisture testers and liquid flow meters are important devices in the grain and fertilizer industries. I think we have the best set of standards for flow meters and moisture testers in the business, Travis said. Our testing program exceeds industry standards, Travis said. Travis was a founding member of the Kansas Scale Company Coalition, which works with the Weights and Measures Division of the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Travis is a member of the National Institute for Standards and Technology, a non-regulatory agency of the U.S. Department of Commerce, which serves as a measurement standards laboratory. Travis is committed to family values. I'm a big family guy, Travis said. Our employees are like family to us, he said. We care for each other and we look after each other like family, Travis said. I'm a patriotic American, Travis said. I love what we are and where we live. For more information, see www.travisscale.com. The big truck drives off the scale in Texas. Everyone can be confident that scale reading is accurate thanks to this company in Kansas. We salute Ron and Cindy Travis, Tyson and Danielle McGuire, and all those involved with Travis Scale Company for making a difference with entrepreneurship in the weights and measures industry. You might say that when it comes to tipping the scales in favor of rural Kansas, they are leading the way. For the Huck Boyd National Institute for Rural Development, this is Ron Wilson with Kansas Profile.
If you'd like to read or hear more Kansas profiles, I will put a link in today's show notes on agtoday.net where you can do that. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Jason Warner as he talks about early weaning. We're cutting to that short break now. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Wednesday show talking about early weaning calves with K-State Cow-Calf Extension Specialist Jason Warner. Jason, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Shelby. Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Jason, as we're talking about early weaning, what do we mean by it, and why is it something producers might want to consider?
It really refers to weaning calves at any point in their age at a time period where that's going to be less than what their typical or traditional age would be. And so I think for a lot of producers, when we think about weaning beef calves, we're typically going to be thinking about doing that somewhere in that 6 to 7 month of age range. And so most people would really define early weaning as doing that, pulling those calves off from their dams at some point less than that typical 200-day of age time frame. And when we take a look at it, for most producers, that usually means somewhere between maybe 4 to 5 months of age. Sometime in there is what we would typically think of when we think about early weaning. So about that 4 to 5 month age range.
And why might someone want to do early weaning?
You know, really, when you take a step back and you think about it, early weaning in and of itself is a very effective management tool for us, really from a couple of different standpoints, from not only a calf management and a calf nutrition standpoint, but really when we think about managing our forage and our grass resources, and then also to managing the nutritional status of that cow and being able to allow for some flexibility with some management changes and some management approaches that we might be able to take later on into the fall or into the winter time period. And so it's something that certainly is not something that producers would necessarily do every year, although there might be some situations where producers would routinely wean calves early at a young age every year. But I think for most producers, you know, early weaning is one of those things where it's kind of an annual evaluation or something that's a decision that's made on an annual basis, just depending on what forage conditions are like and certainly what economics are and what calf prices are. That certainly dictates when we're going to make those decisions and how we're going to make them, certainly.
From the financial aspect, what might people want to consider when it comes to early weaning?
When you make the decision to pull those calves off, and if you're not going to sell them and market them right away at the time when you early wean, if you're going to hold those calves and grow them, you just need to make sure that you're understanding and evaluating the cost that it's going to take to put that weight on those calves relative to the value of the gain. that you're going to be able to receive by taking those calves to a heavier weight. Certainly when we look at it this year as a continuation from where we've been at the last 6 to 12 months, we're still at record high feeder calf prices. And so if you sell those calves this year, even if they only weigh 350 to 400 pounds, they're going to generate a lot of dollars per head right off the cow. And so with where we know our feed cost structure is and our annual cow costs, that should be a profitable decision for a lot of producers this year. However, when you think about it, adding pounds to those calves, if you can add weight to those calves, maybe add 250 to 300 pounds to them after you early wean them. If it's cost effective for you to do that, again, understanding what the cost is relative to the value of the gain, if that works in your favor, then it's beneficial from a dollars per head standpoint to be able to do that. And so encourage folks, no matter how you are going to feed those calves, make sure you understand what your ration and your nutrition program costs are and understand the value of the gain relative to the cost of the gain and what's going to cost you to put that weight on those calves to make sure that you're doing that most economically and that way you can generate the most dollars per head return from your approach there.
Can early weaning be done too early?
When we think about early weaning calves, really important consideration is we've got to have good facilities and good handling equipment in order to be able to handle those calves. And so, really when you think about it, most producers would think about early weaning somewhere between 4 to 5 months of age. But there's good research data out there that would demonstrate that we can effectively wean calves as young as about 90 days of age on average for the herd. And so when you think about it, if you've got the average age of a group of calves that you're going to wean off a set of cows, if that average age is about 90 days, well, that means that we've got some calves that are going to be older than that. At the other end of the spectrum, we know we're going to have some calves that are going to be younger and lighter than that. And when we think about the length of what that calving season might be, we might have some calves that might only be 30 or maybe 45 days old if the average age of the group is about 90 days of age. So certainly we know that we can get some pretty small, pretty lightweight calves when we do that. And in most situations, if we were to wean a set of calves at about 90 days of age, they're probably going to be weighing somewhere between 250 to maybe 300 pounds. We know that we're going to have pretty good facilities that are going to be able to hold those calves and keep those calves in when we go to bring them into a pen or a more confined area. And then also, too, we got to think about having the equipment and the resources in order to be able to handle calves that small. And so can they reach the feed bunk? Can they reach the feed in the feed bunk? Can they reach the water troughs? Those kinds of things. So I think really it's a management and logistic question, I think, for a lot of producers when they're working through how early can we wean those calves. And so from the standpoint of being able to provide feed and water for those calves a little bit more efficiently, a little bit easier, thinking about the setup that a lot of producers have on their farms and ranches. In most situations, that 4 to 5 month age range, somewhere in there, those calves are 120, maybe up to 150 days of age. That's usually a little easier age range, or they're at an age and a weight where it's a little bit easier to accommodate them and handle them.
What nutritional program would a producer need to keep in mind for then if they're early weaning their calves versus traditional weaning?
We make the decision to go ahead and remove that calf from that cow, something less than 200 days of age, that calf's got a pretty high requirement for growth and a pretty high requirement for protein and energy. And so it's really important that we make a good concerted effort and we have a good high-quality diet put together and that we're able to provide for those calves on a daily basis. The thing we got to keep in mind with young, lightweight calves versus a calf that's a little bit older, if a calf's heavier than 500 or 600 pounds, they'll certainly eat a fair amount more feed than what a younger, lighter weight calf will. And so when we think about early weaning calves, those calves that are less than 200 days of age, when we go to bring those calves in and put them in a pen situation, whether they're on a self-feeder or whether it's a total mixed ration situation, however we're providing that nutrition for those calves, we know that just because they're lighter and smaller, their intakes are going to be pretty low. And so we got to make sure that we have a really well-fortified diet. From a protein standpoint, probably looking at a diet that's probably at a minimum of 13% crude protein, maybe on up to about 14 to 15% on a dry matter basis, somewhere in there. And we know that those calves are going to have a pretty low intake, and so we've got to have a good, well-balanced ration that those calves are going to readily accept and be able to do well on. And so with most of the feed resources and the feed stuff that a lot of producers will have available to them, that a lot of folks will have on hand on the farm and ranch, we can put together real good quality rations that'll work really well to wean those calves on. But you really got to pay attention to what your overall intake level is, what the moisture and the forage level in that ration would be, just because those calves are pretty lightweight, pretty low, and can't consume a lot of feed, especially in those first couple of months when you wean them.
What about how early weaning could affect the cow and its nutrition?
So that's a really important question, and really that's the other aspect that early weaning plays a big role in. So it's important from a calf management standpoint, but when we think about managing cows, and particularly young cows or thin cows, that's where early weaning can be really effective for us. And so as I look at it, when we think about the decision to early wean, that needs to be made based on what our forage resources are, but then also too where that cow herd is from a plain and nutrition standpoint. And so some situations where we might think about early weaning would be is if we're concerned about what our forage supply would be for the remainder of the growing season, but then also, too, maybe we're not necessarily in a drought situation. We've got abundant forage available right now at this time of the year, but if we were in a drought situation last year, we had less than abundant precipitation last year, and we know that we had those pastures were drought stressed a year ago, and so early weaning and just taking off that grazing pressure and removing that forage demand from the calf can help free up those forage resources and take the stress off the grass and allow that grass to continue to grow. And so that's another situation where early weaning would be effective. But certainly we know when we early wean those calves, when we cease lactation, remove that calf, we lower the energy requirement of that cow. And depending on her weight and how much milk she produces on a daily basis, it might be anywhere from 30 to 40% of her energy needs would drop. And so we see a decrease in dry matter intake on the part of the cow, too. And so what that allows us to be able to do is we can add some weight and some condition to her more economically, and she can gain weight and gain condition on the forage resources that we have in front of her more easily. And so when we think about going into the fall and into the winter months, having that cow in a better plane of nutrition, if she can gain some body weight and some body condition score without us having to put supplemental feed, supplemental protein and energy into her, that's really an effective strategy there. So young cows that are 2 to 3 years of age, and then thin cows, those are the ones that are going to respond the most from a weight and condition standpoint with regards to early weaning.
Jason, if people are wanting to find out more information on this topic, where could they do that?
Contact your local county extension office or your area beef specialist. We've got additional resources and information on early weaning, management practices, and things we want folks to keep in mind with early weaning, ration approaches, and herd health information, just a lot of things that folks want to keep in mind, not only nutrition and management based, but health management based as well, too. So we have a lot of good available resources there. Our extension website, ksubeef.org for Kansas State University.
That was K-State Cow-Calf Extension Specialist Jason Warner. As he mentioned, you can find additional resources at ksubeef.org. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you ahead.
You're tuned into Agriculture Today. I'm Jacob Cloughton for Shelby Varner, and we end today's show with Brad White, Phillip Lancaster, and Bob Larson from the Beef Cattle Institute.
I do have some questions for you guys, and we'll do this where we've gone through before. If we're in a situation, summer grazing, and you guys can either one jump in, but summer grazing, I've been putting mineral out all year, and then my mineral consumption has dropped by quite a bit. So I'm not putting near as much out. Is this something I need to worry about? Do I need to move the mineral feeder, change to a different type of mineral? Or do I assume, well, if they're not eating it, they're getting it somewhere?
Well, I don't know that you can assume that generally, because generally they're going to consume mineral based on salt. So probably the reason they're not consuming mineral is because they're getting plenty of salt through the forage or somewhere else. So we probably need to think about how to get some mineral into them. So this time of year, we're in the summer, probably starting some summer supplementation of some type, a protein supplement. So have the mineral mixed right into your protein supplement is the best strategy, and then they're going to consume it right along with the protein supplement.
Yeah. Bob, next question for you. Fly control, back rubber, or get everyone in and individually apply an insecticide?
Well, first of all, I've worked with producers that have made a lot of different methods of fly control work. And so I'm not going to actually argue with anybody that has figured out a system that works for them. But I do like a back rubber in that I think most cattle will use it. Particularly, again, it does have to be placed in the right place. Place it in an area where they're going to walk through anyway. And I do have to make sure that it's charged and that I've kept it full. I mean, so there's a little bit of work involved. But it does allow cattle to basically self-medicate every day. Or nearly every day, and that's one of the things I really like. It's a relatively inexpensive way that if it's placed right and it's charged and kept up, it's a pretty good way to provide frequent fly control. And you know, there's stuff I like and don't like about every method of fly control. One of the things I don't like about ear tags is you start with one dose and then that dose gradually declines over the summer. When you're using a back rubber, again, as long as there's still insecticide out there, I'm keeping the same dose throughout the summer, and so I really like that.
Yeah, the struggle is making sure that they all use it, and they won't all use it. So you have to figure out. Whereas if I apply ear tags or insecticide, I gave them all the same dose at one point in time. All right, Phillip. Next topic for you: rapid cool season grasses that were growing rapidly. Tried grazing them, couldn't keep up with them. So now I have a mix of some areas that are grazed really well, some areas where it's gotten too mature. Give me some options. Should I go in and try to make hay in this scenario? Should I continue trying to graze it even though it's gone too mature? Should I try to mow it in the cool season scenario?
At this point, we're probably past the idea of haying a cool season forage. Probably one thing we could try to do, though, is depending on your situation, if you can adjust the size of your pastures or your paddocks to shrink them down quite a bit, and we're going to go more intensive grazing, where we're going to force those animals to consume some more of that older, mature forage, at least trample it down and as they're in there, so that then once we start to get a little cooler weather here, in another month or so, we get a good regrowth, a good flush of good cool season forage again. So I want to get rid of that stuff. I could go in there and I can mow it off with a brush hog or something like that, but that's going to be fairly expensive. But I can do some things about managing the intensity of my grazing. And I also need to probably do a little bit of that anyway, is where I'm allowing some of those pastures to get longer rest as that growth rate slows down in those cool season forages with the hotter weather. Trying to get them to utilize it, which utilization may involve consumption or trampling. And so that way I get that plant to put up some new leaves and shoots and stuff when it cools off.
Absolutely. Great answers, guys. Good answers to those questions.
That's all we have for now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.